Hello, everybody. Welcome in. We've got breaking news. Bradley Beal now officially bought out by the Phoenix Suns. It happened. We've been talking about it, that this was the day it would probably take place due to that $15 million that was due to Bradley Beal yesterday in his contract. Now the buyout is official with the Phoenix Suns, and he intends to sign with the Clippers, according to Shams Charania. I'm Trevor Lade. This is the Basketball Bulletin. We're going to break down what this means for the Clippers, what it means for the NBA, for the rest of the market, everything in general. Welcome in, everybody. If you're joining us for the first time, please make sure you hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. Donnie, welcome in. How are you doing? And maybe not the unexpected outcome here, but still, this is a big deal, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I think it was a pretty foregone conclusion after the trade of Norman Powell, like last week or whatever that was. I think this was what most people expected. There was a lot of reporting around this, that he was going to go there. There were some other interesting teams or interested teams that I thought he could have potentially wound up with. But yeah, this is an interesting place for him to wind up ultimately, and we'll see how it goes.
I think ultimately once Norman Powell was sent to the Miami Heat, the writing was on the wall that the Clippers would be the ideal landing spot. The Clippers picking up John Collins. The way I look at this, really, Donnie, I think this is massive for the Clippers, because the way I look at this, obviously not financially, but roster-wise, they basically get John Collins for free.
Yeah, like, or a deal for free.
Well, in terms of the way you stack up their roster, because Bradley Beal now Beal replaces what Norman Powell gave you, right? And so John Collins, you turn Powell into John Collins, and so you just add him to the team. Now Beal is not the exact same player as Norman Powell. There's going to be some differences there,
but it's a 2-for-1.
Exactly, it's a 2-for-1. You get Beal and Collins by moving Powell off your roster. You become the clear landing spot for Beal. They get him. You add Collins as well. This Clippers roster, they're knocking on the door of being one of those top 3 teams now in the Western Conference.
Yeah, the Clippers, I think, are with this move. I think that they may have pushed themselves into that next tier, that tier that's kind of separated themselves from the pack. Remains to be seen, but I think currently that's Denver, that's Houston, obviously OKC. But this move here, I think, could be a pretty big one for the Clippers. And not just because of this, but because of the Collins piece. The Clippers have quietly needed a guy like John Collins for a while, just to give them an alternative look. They also added in Brook Lopez. Now they got 48 minutes of center, 7-foot rim protection if they want that. They have been playing small ball with Batum or Kawhi at the power forward. They've got John Collins in there while still retaining those guys, so they've got that look if they wanted to go to it. Harden is more of a point guard these days and has been for the last couple of years, and putting a guy like Beal beside him who can create with the ball, can play make for you, but also can be a spot-up guy is going to be pretty nice as well, because he's going to get the open looks. And ultimately, though, I think with them, it largely just depends on how healthy they are, how healthy Kawhi is specifically, all of that stuff. And I believe last year, without looking at it, we had a pretty relatively healthy Kawhi season, but they kind of just burned out in the playoffs.
Yeah, they did.
So yeah, that's one thing that maybe adding Beal can help shield you from as well.
Well, they've got a lot of versatility and size now. You can play bigger with John Collins next to Ivica Zubac, next to Brook Lopez. You can also play smaller with Kawhi at the 4. I think this gives the Clippers a lot of optionality. By the way, I should note, John Gambadoro, who's great out of the Phoenix market, said the 25% guarantee date had nothing to do with the holdup. Okay, great. Then what was it? Because it makes sense. I don't think it's coincidence that it happened today, but he said that was done earlier this month. So nothing to do with it. Okay, great.
Then would he have not gotten that money? Would he have not gotten that extra like 15 million?
Maybe they decided to give it to him earlier. I don't know. But it doesn't really matter for our purposes. No. But just worth noting there, he's saying that was not the holdup. But
he's doing that because he said it would be a 48-hour thing like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, there you go. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. That's right. That's right. Oh, man. That's right. While he's victory lapping, he's got to explain why it didn't happen when he said it was going to happen. Okay.
Because we were waiting for it. We knew all the way back then. It was like, oh, this is going to happen. It just didn't happen. So
right.
That's what he's doing.
Now, the Clippers could still from here be a landing spot for Chris Paul still. But, I mean, how many defensive deficient backcourt players are you going to add to one team? But I guess if you're talking about a veteran minimum here, talent-wise, you could certainly do worse than Chris Paul. Chris Paul could wind up with the Phoenix Suns now in this situation as well. But again, defensive deficient backcourt players. They've already got Jalen Green. They've got Devin Booker. Now you want to add Chris Paul to that mix. I don't know if that's going to be the right move for the Suns either, but we'll see. Chris Paul obviously would like to stay in LA, be close to family. Sham saying the crux of the decision for Beal was finding the best basketball situation first and foremost once he was granted permission by the Suns to speak to other teams. So that's how you get around the whole tampering aspect of this, is the Suns say, hey, you've got our blessing. Go talk to other teams about what it is that what kind of role you'd be in. And then that gives Beal more incentive. If he gets excited about joining another team, it gets Beal more incentive to give back money, which he gave back $14 million, and he's only getting $11 million. So technically he gave back some money here in order to not be persona non grata in the desert.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just still crazy that they decided to do this because of the long-term ramifications of that, and having that salary on your books for, like we said before, the duration of the Booker
$5
prime.
million
And you've are 5 years there. You've now
I'm sorry,
also
5 years,
up,
not $5 million.
You've also locked up. They wish it was $5 million.
Yeah, right.
They've also locked up Booker on a crazy extension too, but they're going to also be hamstrung by this Beal. Like, I don't know if I wanted him gone that badly.
Look at this spot track on the ball. They've already got it updated. Dead money, Bradley Beal, Ouchtown. Population, Phoenix, $19.3 million dead, sitting on their books for the next 5 years. Now, it does free up space below the aprons for them. That's obviously important here. And that's really the incentive here for the Suns to go ahead and do this. It gives the Suns increased team building flexibility. It drops them all the way out of not just the second apron, but the first apron as well, and provides more access to tradable draft picks in the future, because as a second apron team, they'd be freezing their draft picks 7 years out, plus opening up part of the mid-level exception. So this does do more than just send Bradley Beal away. And I don't think Beal was a malcontent in any particular way, but it does remove him off the roster. Then it gives the Suns more flexibility to below the aprons. And in a way, Donnie, I think this is big picture, macro level. This is a big win for the NBA that the Suns had to concede. The Suns, when the new collective bargaining agreement came out, they said, screw you. We don't care. We're going to do it anyway. We don't care if the new CBA is supposed to try to limit our ability to stack up stars. We're going to put 3 stars together anyway, and we're going to pay them what we want because we've got a new owner who can make the money rain. And the new CBA struck back, and the Clippers are finally tapping out, the Suns are tapping out and giving in and saying, okay, we'll fall in line here. We'll bite the bullet and we'll drop below the aprons.
Yeah. And there were other teams that still tried to say whatever, like Boston, for example. And they're a little bit of a different case because they were forced into it because Tatum is out, and they were like, we're not going to bother with this team. We're just going to blow it up. But Phoenix particularly said, screw the rules. We don't care. We're going to do all this stuff before it comes into place, and decided to trade for Beal, which was not a great fit in the first place, but they were just or Ishbia or whoever was just so hell bent on getting another star on the team. Mm-hmm. And it backfired entirely. They weren't able to put anything together for a couple seasons there. I think in hindsight, I do think that the Dame thing really emboldened them to do this. And I wonder if there's another team that's kind of lurking like, maybe we can do it too. But you just would have probably preferred to have done this before things went sour with KD in hindsight.
Yeah.
So you could have kept him
think
and
this
continued?
is kind of like how the Nuggets got rid of Mike Malone with 3 games to play, in part because they saw the Grizzlies do it with Taylor Jenkins with 9 games to play. They went, well, shit, if they could do it, we could do it. You're thinking the Clippers saw the same thing. They went, well, if the Bucks can eat Dame's dead money on their books for 5 years, we can do it with Bradley Beal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely what happened here. Is like, this has not been something teams have done for quite a while with this big of a salary. Like, these are probably the 2 biggest salaries ever to do this.
They are the biggest salaries. Dame would be number 1, and then Beal is number 2 in terms of the biggest, because Beal gave back $14 million.
Yeah, so
Beal is the second largest salary ever bought out in the history of the NBA.
There's not a precedent for guys making this much money to get bought out. So I don't think teams were ever really going to go this way.
Yeah.
And until the Bucks kind of pulled a rabbit out of the hat and said, let's decide to do it with Dame, and created something from nothing. So maybe you would have liked to have had it done previously, but I mean, all of that stuff sounds nice, where it's like, okay, they're below the first apron, all that stuff. They've got flexibility. That's all good. But I want to see how things look for this team over the next couple of years. What are they going to plan to put around Booker because they've locked him up? What are they going to plan to do with this roster? What are their long-term aspirations? I think that's what matters the most. What are they going to do with this flexibility?
That's it. That's it exactly. And that's going to determine the ultimate math, the ultimate win-loss toll on this for the Suns. If the Suns turn this into nothing, and by the way, I think this would be catastrophic if that's what they do. If the Suns have this roster still, because I think they have a lot of work to do, if they still have this roster going into the season, then this was idiotic. And we've seen the Suns do idiotic stuff in the past. They just did it at the trade deadline. They turned a future unprotected pick into 3 kind of crappy picks because they thought they were going to be able to turn those into Jimmy Butler, and then it didn't work. They couldn't make it happen, and Jimmy Butler went to Golden State. So we've seen the Suns do dumb stuff in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean this is. It's going to be determined. Whether or not this was the right move will be determined by what the Suns do next. What do they do with this flexibility, and what do they do with this roster? Because there's still, and look at this, it's all shooting guards and centers. Like that's what's on this team, shooting guards and centers, and that's it. So they still have a lot of work to do. But again, I'm not going to condemn the Suns. Like 19 point whatever million in dead money on your books, that is going to hurt. That's a heavy price to pay.
Yeah. But
let's see what they do next before we chalk this up as a loss or a win or anything else for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is one thing where you can kind of look at it to play devil's advocate a couple of years from now and say, well, that 19.3 million is only going to be like 10% of the cap in a couple of years or something like that. But I think the important thing to remember with that is that that's 19.3 million. You're not putting towards an actual rostered player at that point. That's where that really
can't do anything with it. Like even if you had a bad contract at $20 million, you could use that contract in a trade. You could do something with it. This is just your cap is now $20 million lower than everybody else's. That's tough.
That's crazy. Yeah. So there's that too. But yeah, I guess it remains to be seen. So on the Beal thing, like I mentioned earlier, there were a number of teams that were interested in Beal. I thought maybe the most sense was made if he would have went to Milwaukee, but the chat's been really conflicted. I gave my opinion on the Clippers. I think you might have loosely, but what do you think about the Clippers? And then also, should he have gone elsewhere?
For the Clippers, I think this is a huge win. I think this was a no-brainer for them. I think you replace the production of Norman Powell without actually having to really lose that play, right? You added a big that really helps you. I've been a fan of John Collins for years. You can go back and listen to the front office show from years ago, back when he was with the Hawks. Keith and I have been talking about it for so long. I like John Collins. I think he's going to be a really nice addition, and you essentially get him roster building wise for free. And you add and you keep that shooting guard position filled with Brad Beal. Now that said, I think this does
just
for the
Beal though, specifically for the Beal piece.
For Beal, I think that it's a win for him. He gets to stay in a significant role. I think what this does for Bradley Beal is it's going to allow him to go be on a team that's got a chance, that's got a very finite window. We're going to go for it for 2 years, and that's it. That's the way the Clippers salaries are structured right now. They're going for it for 2 years, and then they're resetting things. The Kawhi Harden era has an expiration date on it, and it's 2027, which is not by mistake. That's when a bunch of free agents, we're already hearing about a bunch of teams that are trying to set up cap space for that year. That's Giannis, that's Jokic, that's maybe Luka, that's a few other players that could hit the free agent market in 2027. So that's the Clippers' plan. We're going for it for the next 2 years with Brad Beal, with Harden, with Kawhi, and see what we can make of it. For Beal, this is a great fit for him. Most of these other locations probably couldn't offer a starting job. You could make the argument the Bucks would have been the better go-to, and especially because they're in the extremely depleted and weak Eastern Conference, if he really wanted to make a title push. But then again, his family really loves Phoenix.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't want to be in Milwaukee during winter, I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Jump over to LA, right? So that side of it, I think, makes a lot of sense too for Brad Beal. The final piece to all of this, though, is Donnie, I think this makes for the Clippers, for Beal, for Harden, this makes Kris Dunn and his health extremely important, because on paper, Harden and Beal, at least defensively, don't really fit. Now you could argue with Derrick Jones Jr., with Kawhi, with Big Zoo at the rim, Brook Lopez at the rim, you've got the pieces to help mitigate your defensive concerns with that backcourt. But that's still kind of tough. So I think the Clippers' best lineups are probably going to include Kris Dunn next to Beal or Kris Dunn next to Harden. And so I think this puts more of not necessarily a spotlight, because the stars are still the stars, but his role is now more important than ever in the Clippers.
Yeah, I agree with you. They don't really have a lot of guys like a Kris Dunn on the roster, and they've got a lot of guys that you could maybe target, like between Beal and Harden potentially. I think both of those guys can defend up a little bit better. Like Harden's good as like a defense in the post type of guy, but not so much as a perimeter foot speed type of guy. Beal is a little bit stockier and a little bit better on that end than he gets credit for being. But Kris Dunn, regardless, is the best of those three in terms of POA, defense, perimeter, all that stuff. He's absolutely vital to what this team is going to try to do and be competitive. So we've had a lot of comments, and it's really funny because a lot of the comments are extremely split. So I'm sure that's the Laker audience, right?
No,
but
that can't be it.
I've seen some crazy, like every end of the spectrum of like, this means nothing for the Clippers. They've never won anything. They'll never win anything. What do you think? Like I said, I think that maybe this move separates them a little bit from that glut in the Western.
Yeah.
What do you think this does for them?
I think this is, so you've got pretty clearly, you've got OKC sitting at the top of the West. I think Houston and Denver have separated themselves in another tier there in the Western Conference. They're clearly the second tier. This is the Clippers knocking on the door of that second tier. And I want to see how this all comes together for the Clippers. I'm not going to put them up there with OKC. I'm not going to put any team up there with OKC until they prove it, until we see it. But I think the moves that Houston's made, the moves Denver has made, and we already know kind of what this team looks like together, that they can be one of those top tier clubs. That's got them in a second tier for me. The Clippers are right there knocking on that door to be with Denver and Houston in the second tier of the Western Conference. And maybe, and again, from my perspective, I'm really looking at this as you added John Collins to this roster. More so than Brad Beal replaces what Norman Powell gave you. John Collins is the you got him for free type of thing. Same thing with Brook Lopez. So what can those two pieces really change? Can they allow the Clippers to play bigger for when they're matched up with like the Houston Rockets of the world? Does that give you more bodies to throw at Jokic? I would hesitate to put the Clippers right now in that second tier of the Western Conference, but man, they're right there, and I wouldn't fault anybody who wants to put them there.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. All right, let's get to some of these super chats.
Let's do it. So Miguel said, interesting to see what the Suns do now. They can aggregate players in a trade. Yes, that could be critical too. Again, the Suns roster does not make sense as it's presently structured. So they've got more moves to make here for sure. They've got to go add players. They've got to round out their roster. They've got way too many guys that play the same position. Wouldn't mind the Lakers targeting Richards, Brooks, or O'Neal. Those are the primary guys that are going to be on the move, with the exception of Dillon Brooks. I think Dillon Brooks stays, but Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, and then Nick Richards are the primary pieces to watch moving from the Phoenix Suns as they look to kind of round out this roster. Clearly, they went from a team that was fairly needy at the center position to now being well stocked there with Mark Williams, with Kamen Maluach. Of course, you've got Oso Ighodaro, who's my pal Keith Smith's favorite player in the world. So now Nick Richards becomes a bit superfluous for them. So Phoenix is not done, and they could very well end up moving these guys. And I think, Donnie, these are, I mean, not necessarily the most valuable players out there, particularly when we look at Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal having longer-term deals. But these are the kinds of players that I think teams will have interest in terms of they provide perimeter defense, provide some rim protection with Nick Richards. These guys should have some value out there on the market.
Yeah, I think Nick's salary is so small that the only concern with him is like how much is he going to want to re-up for?
Sure.
But between the other two, I don't necessarily love the Allen salary, especially if I'm looking towards having, free space, but I don't mind the O'Neal one though.
If you're eyeing cap space in 2027, and a lot of teams are, this is not just a Lakers thing or whatever. It's not Project 2027. They hate that, by the way. It's not just that. But it's a lot of teams around the NBA. So I could see where there's a reluctance
to
to
take
take
either.
to take Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal because
Yeah.
they go into 2027. A lot of teams are looking at that and saying we don't want deals that go into that year. There's just too much talent that could be available. And Donnie, the way the NBA has been going, there's no certainty. All of the big names that right now are kind of earmarked for 2027 could be off the market well
Yeah.
before we get to 2020. They could all
Yeah.
sign extensions or new deals or whatever. But right now, teams are looking at that summer and saying that's the summer, that's the
Yeah.
year to strike.
That's the thing that's a little bit annoying to me about all of that is that like these guys typically don't leave in free agency anymore. They get the extension and then down the road, whether that's a year or whatever, they ask for a trade. They don't typically get traded or they don't just typically leave as free agents anymore. So that's one thing I would be concerned about. But still, regardless, if you're looking at maybe one of those guys like a Giannis or potentially a Luka or somebody like that that's going to be on the market next offseason or the following offseason, unless they extend, of course. The good thing is that, like, even if they're not technically free agents, you could still look at the other guys as well to absorb into that cap space. You could still trade for somebody else theoretical and, you know, absorb them into that space. So that's, I think, why teams are also doing this too.
It's a great point. Cap space doesn't just have to be used to sign free agents. There's other uses for it as well. Mabadu said, Trevor, the Lakers need a 3-and-D wing badly as of right now. I think they need multiple, honestly. I think they'd, and as Dan Wojcicki's piece noted today, the team knows that too. They know they need point of attack defenders. I don't know who's guarding the best player. Last year we had Max Christie. You know, Josh Okogie is now out there on the market. Maybe that's somebody they take a look at. I've heard specifically there's some thought that Marcus Smart might get bought out and that he could potentially be a target, but they understand. They know where their deficiency is on paper right now. I also say they have the MO of waiting into the season and being patient and then trying to fix problems. I don't particularly like it, but that's been their strategy for years now, is to wait into the season. It's been, I mean, Donnie, you know, this has been years since they've made a trade during the summer, much to the dismay of Lakers fans. So
this is the third year, right?
This is.
Man, that's insane. I wonder if you look at how many teams are in that situation that fancy themselves as a playoff contender or a championship contender. How many teams haven't done a trade in the offseason other than the Lakers?
Yeah.
In that same span. Like that just seems like there's not many. Just
it probably wouldn't be a very big room, you know, full of people. How many teams have not made a trade that are considered to be contenders, not made a trade during the offseason? Yeah, I think that's true. That's probably not many.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might be Rob Pelinka doing the Will Smith, you know, by himself.
Yeah,
that's looking around.
That's an interesting thing to look at. I bet there's not many teams in that situation. But yeah, I think everybody kind of needs a 3-and-D wing. Everybody wants those guys, which is what makes it so hard to find them. Everybody's looking for those guys. You've got guys like Okogie where it's like he's a D wing, but like not a 3-and-D wing. So there's guys like that you can maybe go get. And if you can maximize a guy like that, then you've maybe found a diamond in the rough. But an actual legitimate 3-and-D wing, there's just not really any out there.
Those guys get paid, and teams do not like letting those guys go. And it's part of the reason why I thought it was such a big get for the Rockets to get Dorian Finney-Smith.
Oh yeah.
Such a big addition for them. I get Rob's trying to manage assets, but seeing Denver get Cam Johnson with Michael Porter Jr. on one pick, Clippers get Collins and replace Powell with Beal, it's frustrating why Rob can't do something similar. Anytime you see that's not just a Lakers fan specific thing. Fans of 28 teams really right now are looking around going, man, why can't our team go get a Brad Beal like that? Anytime another team makes a move, how many fans of other teams said we could have offered more than what the Lakers gave up for Luka, right? A lot of teams did that, but yeah, there's some pressure to keep up with the Joneses in the Western Conference for sure. When you see what's happened, Donnie, it kills us. We talk about all the time. The West is so loaded compared to the East. We hoped it would get better. We hoped that some players would see the opportunity that exists in the Eastern Conference and they would head over there for smoother sailing. No, the West has just become more and more packed and crowded, and the guys that we thought maybe would leave, nope, they have stayed. So it is going to be a grueling battle in the West once again this season. And there is going to be that pressure to try to keep up with some of these other teams. But for the Lakers specifically, they're so asset poor that they have to be extremely careful with whatever they do. It has to be the right move. And clearly they didn't have a starting job to offer Brad Beal. And so that's, I would imagine, probably a difference maker here, in addition to, the amount of salary the Clippers were able to offer. I think the Lakers could have got there, but they didn't have a starting job to offer. And I'm not saying he would have gone to the Lakers if they did. I don't know. But I think that was probably an attractive quality for the Clippers if I'm Brad Beal, that I can make sure that I still have that starting spot.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. It's like, okay, well, where does he want to go? Because there's not a lot of places where he could go get a starting spot and maybe be in contention. The Clippers were just the only one that I thought made a lot of sense. And again, maybe Milwaukee, but that's about it. Like, there weren't a lot of options. I started spitballing at the end of the last video. Like, can he go here? Can he go? Like, there's nowhere really to go when you look at it if he wants to be a starter and play meaningful minutes and all that stuff. So ultimately, though, yeah, on the super chat piece, yeah, some teams have been really creative and been able to make some stuff happen when they didn't really have assets. I mean, we talked all season about how Denver was hamstrung and they had no choice but to move on from MPJ if they wanted to make something happen.
Yes.
And they traded a pick
It was a
that
great
I think
move
was
for them.
It was, and I think that was like their only pick that they could have traded it. But the thing is with it is that it's, I believe, post Jokic prime, all that stuff. So it's kind of who knows what you'll be at that time, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But you're going all in on the Jokic prime, Jokic time right now. But they didn't have anything. But they found a trade and made a trade for a guy like Cam, for example. And then they had other guys they brought in too. So
it opened up flexibility for them too. Like, they saved a lot of money on that deal. That they got Bruce Brown, they got Tim Hardaway Jr. Then they were able to get the Jonas Valanciunas. Maybe they finally convinced Jonas by picking up that player option on his second year, or I'm sorry, team option on his second year to stick around. But I love what Denver has done this season. They've done had an incredible offseason, and they're ready to roll, man. That's a very good team, and that I'm still a little confused about why the Cam Johnson trade package was so little. The only thing I can come to is the Nets must really believe that Michael Porter Jr. is going to bounce back and that he's a legit 20-point per game guy in a different system and has the ability to become that. Because I think some teams looked at MPJ and thought, he's probably a negative value now on this contract. The Nets obviously don't value him that way.
Well, the Nets have time to kind of put him in a position to give him shots. And man, trust me, he's going to take some shots. That team's going to be interesting. With him and Cam Thompson,
for sure.
Cam Thompson, they are going to be over there. Man, they're going to be chucking up 30 shots a game between both of them. I wanted to ask you about this. So Jay said Okogie shot 35 from three, not great, but respectable. So looking at Okogie's three, he shot 35 between the two teams last year, but 31, 33, 29, 27, 26, 28, and all the years prior. Those are his percentages from three for a career of 29.9%.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, unless he all of a sudden learned how to shoot, that he's probably closer to what his career says at this point. What would you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Okogie, and when we look at his percentages, when did he shoot well from three, and how big is that sample size? It's pretty small.
25 games.
Right? Yeah, we're looking at, okay, in the 24-25 season in total, he shot 35% from three. We're rounding up to get there. That was over 40 games, but that's because he shot 38% from deep in 25 games for Phoenix. I hope that's what he is, but I don't think 40 games total where he happened to shoot well for Phoenix during a stretch is enough for us to suddenly check the box and say, that's it. He is a league average 3-point shooter now.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case, because if he is infinitely more valuable. But I think if we're evaluating him realistically, we have to say the much larger sample size of his entire career is probably more reflective of what he really is as a shooter until he proves otherwise. And it's the same thing with a lot of guys. Nobody bought Rui Hachimura's improvement in 3-point shooting until he did it a second year. Then he did it the next year. This is a real thing here. I think if Okogie does that this next season, wherever he lands, then we can say, okay, he's really improved. But 40 games, it's just not a big enough sample size for me to check that box right now.
You know where I'll give him a little bit of grace is that he shows, based on the numbers here, that he's willing to take that shot. And that actually can go a long way. Like, he's willing to take it. He has some seasons where he's getting up close to three. And if he's willing to take it despite not being great, at that point, if he's making one in every three of them for you, or shooting 34, 35% on, 2 or 3 per game, I think you could kind of live with that with the defensive production. So that's where I would give him a bit of grace on that for
Yeah,
sure.
per 36, taking 5.3 per game. That's not bad there, right? In terms of the 3-point attempts. He's the kind of player where he just needs to get to average so that he's a threat. That's it. It's not that the three ball needs to be some major weapon for him. It's just that he needs to be a threat. Otherwise, defenses are not going to care about him, and you're playing 5-on-4. That's all it is. He has to be a threat to knock it down if you leave him open. That's all you're looking for from him.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's go here. Breaking news, Lakers fans can't wait to hear and see Rob Pelinka's been relieved of his duties. Can we trade general managers with the Flippers? And I love that the avatar here is Rob wearing a Lakers hat, sleeping. Wow.
Oh, great.
Wow.
I was surprised to see him the other day. I thought I could have swore he was sleeping.
He was there. He wasn't golfing. He was not at Disneyland.
Oh yeah, I saw that image of him golfing. Oh my God, his PR is in shambles, man.
Well, you know what? I mean, I look at it this way. Like, Donnie, the real problem for Rob Pelinka this summer, for the Lakers this summer, has not been what they've done. It's been what the rest of the West has done, right? Because you look at what was the number one concern for that team this summer. It was getting a center. Well, guess what? You got DeAndre Ayton. And as it turned out, you weren't going to be able to get Brooke Lopez or Clint Capella for the taxpayer mid-level. So given the scenario, given what options were out there, landing DeAndre Ayton is probably the best, like wildest outcome that we could not have foreseen. Maybe not wildest, given that this team has Luka on it and that came out of nowhere, but probably the best outcome possible for them. And they accomplished that. They got Jake LaRavia, I think, on a pretty reasonable contract and negotiated a good deal with him. The moves they've made, I think, have largely been gambles, but smart gambles, I believe. But the problem is what's happened with the rest of the West. That's why people are so down on the Lakers. It's not so much what the Lakers have done. It's what the rest of the West has done. And the fact that I think you can see there's still holes on the roster. If the rest of the West had stood pat and the Lakers added pieces, then I think people would be a little bit more optimistic about this team. It's watching everybody else get significantly better while the Lakers have got maybe a little bit better that has people concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that they did fix their biggest hole, but there's still moves that remain to be made. I mean, we talked about earlier how like they haven't done anything in the offseason for a few years in terms of trading a player. And maybe there's a few guys on this roster that people are hoping that they actually trade and do something with those expiring salaries. So, you know, that's another piece of it too. But it's just, I think they're in a position where if they were to try to make a trade to get off of a Gabe Vincent, for example, they would have to attach something to it. They don't really have tradable seconds. They have one tradable first, I believe, right? Like they don't have things to attach to these guys. And so they're kind of stuck. So.
But Daniel, sorry, Daniel was texting me. Donnie,
you want to know something funny? This is a little bit separate. Every time you say Keith, I laugh a little bit because like I watch like you guys do your show and stuff, and you say Keith and that, but that's my middle name, so like I actually respond to it.
So I could just make it easy on myself and just say Keith all the time.
Technically,
I could just default to that.
You've got a thing for Keiths.
This is like what's the name? Aaron Kelly becoming Aaron on The Office or something like that. There we go. Okay. All right. So we got Keith here with me again.
No,
man. So I think when we're looking at where this team's at, we look at their books and what they've got going on. They've got moves they need to make. There's no question. This team, they've got moves they still need to make. The Lakers do. Will they make them this offseason? We'll see. But the Lakers, they've done some good things this summer. They haven't done enough. Everybody knows that. They need to do more. And I do think that one move that I'm very much expecting by the 20th, which is coming up quickly, Shake Milton will be waived. And then they will have an open roster spot to play with. If they were to add, say, I've got a question here asking, can we get Josh Okogie and Smart? Is it possible? I'm assuming that's talking about the Lakers.
If one of them takes a minimum.
If both of them, I think, would just about have to take minimum.
Yeah.
Well, the Lakers, in order to get both, you would have to move somebody. You would have to find a trade. You would have to jettison Gabe Vincent, jettison Maxi Kleba, something like that. You would need to be able to move off of a player to do that, to get both. You just don't have roster spots for both of them. You could sign one, but in order to get both, you would need to trade away somebody somehow. So that would be the path to getting both. And even then, they're getting pretty close to that first tier apron right now. We look at the space below the first apron. Right now, they're just $900,000, but really look at that as $3.9 million because the $3 million for Shake is going to come off the books. So $3.9 million below the first apron. And you really don't want to be right up against. It's not like, cool, we have $3.9 million to go spend. You really don't want to be right up against that apron because then you significantly limit your flexibility in season. So could they? Yes, but I think it would require a trade to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Interesting. Oh, we got that one already from Miguel. Let's go here. With the Suns shooting themselves in the foot, lowering their cap with dead money, does Booker see the writing on the wall and try moving east? I don't know if they've shot themselves in the foot yet.
No to the second part because he just took the money, which to be fair, I can't blame him.
He just got that extension in Phoenix. Yeah, I mean, hey, take the money while you can and then figure out your destination later if you need to.
Maybe he gets a couple years into this and is like, you know what, I've had enough. Like, I'm 31, this and that. But for now, no. Like, he's in on all this stuff. He knows they're going to cut him. He knows what their plan is. He knows the outlook of their cap situation. They've involved him in everything. So,
yeah,
for now, I'd have to assume he's not a malcontent. So, we'll see.
This is definitely something that that Booker is in on. There's no way they do all this stuff. It's just like, do we really buy that the Bucks would have said, okay, we're going to take $22 million in dead money for 5 years on the books without talking to Giannis about it and see whether or not he likes this plan? There's no chance. There's no way they didn't do this without talking to Devin Booker. There's no way they would have gone down that path. So Booker's in on this, and I have to believe this is just the first, well, not really the first because the Durant trade already happened, but this is a step for the Suns. This is not the final step. If the Suns go into the season with this roster, Devin Booker should be very upset and angry.
Do they have their pick this year?
It's not a roster that makes sense. Let me double check and see because they've moved so many picks.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I asked. But yeah, like I assumed that when they pitched all of this stuff to Beal, going all the way back to the KD trade or to Booker about Beal, the KD trade, all that stuff, I'd have to assume that it was a multi-year plan, of course, because whether or not he's happy this season, he knows there's only so much pivoting they can do within one season. So he would have to be okay with giving them like maybe 2-3 years to figure it out. I just question if that's what's in his best interest, but he's getting paid $60 million. So
Phoenix's pick is going to Washington, Memphis, or Charlotte, depending on how things break down. It's very complicated the way to just look at these and tell what's going where. The bottom line, the Suns traded their 2026 first round pick. Their 2027 first is also gone. They have a 2027 first coming in. That's how they were able to trade their 2027 first.
So wait, which one did they swap then? Because they can't get rid of both of them.
Well, they have a 2027 first.
Oh, that's because they did the trade in the season. That's right.
Right. Yeah. So that's what's allowed them to move that pick. So yeah, Phoenix not in a great spot draft pick wise, for the future. The picks that they were able to get would not be super valuable. But again, we'll see. Now they've got added flexibility. Now they're below the first apron. What does that allow them to do here? How far below that apron are they? I mean, that's a pretty significant amount, 8.9 million. They'd have the part of the mid-level exception to use, maybe more if they have other trades. So Phoenix is not done. Phoenix cannot be done. They've got work to do here. This is just another step, and I'm curious to see where all this goes for them.
Chris Paul, come on down for $8 million.
That's so mean to the Suns, man.
It's gonna happen, man. I mean, I guess we should talk about this a little bit too. Now that Beal, we have been saying this for a while. Now that Beal finally is situated, the other guys will come off the board sooner than later, I imagine. And Chris Paul is one of those dominoes that remains to be seen where he goes. But we do know he wants to start, supposedly, so we'll see what happens with that. He could go to the Clippers or Phoenix. Those are the two teams he was mostly linked to. And I guess if he wants to start, wants to be somewhere in that general vicinity, then Phoenix is the destination he would go to. And this being his last year, them both being former teams, I'd assume he gets the full rollout, retirement tour, all that stuff too. So I think that matters maybe a little bit, but yeah, maybe he's the next guy that they do sign.
So looking at, here's the free agents that are available. The guard market has largely been held up by Brad Beal and waiting to see where he's going to go because teams wanted to make sure he was off the board. So now these are the guys, right, that we should see land somewhere. Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Paul, Gary Payton II. That's an interesting one that's sitting out there. Gary Payton II, pretty good, defensive guard there. Josh Giddey is restricted. He's not going anywhere. He'll wind up staying in Chicago whenever they eventually see eye to eye on the contract. Malik Beasley, we know he's not going to get signed anywhere. At least I wouldn't bet on that. He's going to wind up waiting until everything gets resolved with his situation. Amir Coffey, though, that's another interesting one that's right now sitting out there. I would expect that domino to fall. Russell Westbrook, of course. I don't know what's going to happen with Corey Joseph. Is this, does he call it a career? Where does he go there? Alec Burks, you go down the list. There are a number of guards that are still out there. Lonnie Walker could get scooped up somewhere, I suppose. There's Ben Simmons is somebody that's already been linked to the Knicks. There's a number of guys, maybe not the top tier guys out there, maybe not huge difference makers at this stage in their careers, but guys that are going to come off the board now that this Brad Beal decision has come down. The rest of the market, like the center pool, is very, very dry. The wings, I mean, there's really not much out there, but the guard market has been held up by this Beal thing. So there's some interesting guys that are going to land some places. Oh, you caught that, huh?
Man. No comment on that one. I was watching I was telling yesterday, I was watching a thing on that whole situation, and man, it is messy.
What a mess.
It's messy.
What a mess.
So yeah. But those guys are coming off the market. Like I would like to see where some of those guys wind up going. I guess you kind of gave him a bit of a shout out there, GP2.
Yeah.
He's a bit older than I thought he was. I thought he was like 29. He's turning on 33 here. But he's a nice guy that if teams need like a defensive guard wing guy, they can put him out there. He guards up pretty well too. So his main thing is that he's always hurt.
Yeah, that's the problem with him. Otherwise, I think he'd already be somewhere. But everybody, everybody in the chat that's saying, "Oh, this free agent list isn't any good." These are rotation players. That's what we're talking. We're not talking. You're not talking about necessarily starters.
And you're 2 weeks into free agency.
Yeah, those guys are not going to be out there at this point of free agency. We're just talking about rotation guys. And you know what? Like in this era of the NBA, what have we learned? It's that depth matters more now than ever before. So these guys that everybody wants to turn their nose up at could very well wind up mattering to a team. Not because they're the best player, they're going to go out there and drop 25 points on any given night, but as a depth piece, as a 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe 9th guy on a roster, as we're finding, these guys matter more and more and more. So it's important that we do pay attention to those guys and give them a little bit of shine here. Ryan said, when multiple teams buy out $100 million contracts, it's pretty clear the CBA broke the NBA. This is kind of a circus. The league needs to update some rules, in my opinion. I do think, and this will be like an August topic, but I do think there are changes that can be made to the CBA. It is not as Ben Simmons has back surgery in 2 days. That's funny. It's not quite as restrictive as I initially would have projected it to be, because teams have gotten creative and they found ways around the rules. I thought, for example, the teams not being able to take back more salary in a trade if they're above the first apron would really hamstring trades, because then two teams that are above the first apron, it's very difficult for them to trade with each other. Instead, we found teams get creative and loop in third teams and do more things there. So the trade market hasn't suffered as much as I would have thought. But yeah, the collective bargaining agreement is definitely very restrictive. There are certainly some tweaks that I think should be made to it. I don't know that players getting bought out is necessarily evidence that it's broken the NBA. I think that's more an example of teams getting creative in order to play within these rules and they're willing to take, and how punitive the CBA is evident by the fact that they are preferring to have dead money on their books over dealing with one of these CBA restrictions. And I think what it does is it's going to make it all the more damaging when teams make poor decisions. So having a smart front office is a bigger advantage now, and a savvy front office is a bigger advantage now than I think we've ever seen. And so that is the reality of the new NBA. And teams are going to have to catch up to that. I don't know that it's necessarily a sign that it's broken, but it is a sign that having a player not perform up to his contract at this stage is a very, very damaging thing in this collective bargaining agreement. So you got to be careful with the guys you sign.
Yep. And this one we've seen kind of like the middle tier guys kind of get squeezed pretty heavily with this new CBA. We've talked about that a good bit. And then also those guys that were on those old school maxes, like a Levine and things like that. Also, those types of contracts, like the one that Lauri Markkanen just signed last offseason, those types of guys on like 40 million, the high 30s, 40s, those are the guys that you have questions about, can they actually make that amount of money and be your third guy or something like that on these teams that have title aspirations? That's where I mostly have concerns about this CBA.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people say that it punishes teams for drafting well because they have to move on from those players. And
there's a little bit of that, but you have to. What it does is you have to continue to draft well. If you draft well, you got to keep doing it. But you have a little bit of a runway because the guy's on the low deal for a handful of years. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. All right. Kobe said Lakers look done making moves except for the margins. Probably. You never know. You never know what deals they could have in the works, but probably. Rob seems like he's been too impacted by poor moves in the past to act decisively outside of obvious moves. Yeah, I think that's something to it, right? They touched the stove and got burned badly, right? And so they're not going to want to try cooking again. And that's part of, I think, what's happened with the Lakers. I also think that the sins of the past have made it more difficult to make any moves now because they're so asset poor that they can't get anything wrong. They can't take a risk and be wrong because they're not like OKC could take a flyer on somebody, and if it doesn't work out, you've got all the draft capital in the world to fix that problem if you need to. If you need to move off of a contract, no problem. We're going to attach like 2 picks to a player, whatever you need to do, you can do it. The Lakers are not in that position because they've constantly tried to fix past mistakes by pouring draft picks on them. And at some point that bill comes due. And so now they're at a point where they have so little assets. But now that doesn't mean they factually don't have draft picks. They do. They've got a 2026 pick. They have a 2028 pick. They got a 2030 pick. Right? They've got draft picks, but tradable picks are very, very limited. They only have one tradable second rounder, and I think it's like 2032, I want to say. So they have to be very, very careful with what they do. And that is the other part of the moves of the past that haven't paid off. And that's what I'm talking about, the new CBA. Making the wrong moves, signing the wrong players, making the wrong trade is now more damaging than it ever was before. So you've got to be right. You have to make smart moves. And that's where I say having a good front office is now one of the biggest advantages, and it always was, but is now really, I think, one of the biggest advantages that a team can possibly have.
Yeah, sounds like we would benefit from putting guys in the front office with Rob because he's the only guy up there basically right now for the Lakers. And my thing about this from Kobe is those types of moves are moves that are 3, 4, 5 years old. Like, what's going on? Like, how are you still reeling from that? Like, how do you get to a point where these deals that are 3, 4 years old, that you're still reeling from them and these decisions that you've made? That's all because you didn't manage the assets in the time since the proper way. And then also paying those assets to try to band-aid over these things instead of letting things recoup a certain way. So, and maybe there was some pressure to make certain moves along the way. I don't know, but one way or the other, it hasn't been managed properly for a handful of years.
Yeah, exactly. It hasn't been. They've seen too many assets that have just disappeared into nothing rather than be flipped into something else.
You know what's egregious was like guys like Beasley, wait, ironically,
Sure.
Beasley, Bamba. These are guys you paid assets to get, and you just let them go.
Bamba played 9 games.
You just let them go. You didn't turn those salaries into another player or anything. Those were contracts you could have used.
It's all the times that people have said, well, oh, it's just a second round pick. Well, get those second round picks add up. They add up, they add up, they add up. And now this is where you're at.
3 were turned into, okay, so like the DFS thing, you could play devil's advocate and say, well, they got these other 2 guys, but but he did pay 3 seconds to get him in the first place.
Sure.
So.
Right. And all you got out of him was half a season. Now you could say they did it before the Luka trade. And so you didn't know the Luka trade was coming. But still, like, DFS is the kind of player you would target if Luka is going to be on your team, because not only does he fit skill set wise, he's also one of his best friends. So it's a tough spot for them to be in for sure. They've got to get things right. They've got to get everything right. And we'll see. I mean, look, if Luka signs that extension this summer, as we're expecting him to, I would expect him to, even if he wants to be a Laker for the remainder of his entire career, I would expect him to sign a 3-year deal with a player option after the second year, because that will get him out at his 10 years of service and will make him eligible for the Supermax. Teams are going to be licking their chops in 2027, hoping to convince Luka to not sign a new deal with the Lakers at that point and to come sign with them. That's going to be a thing. And so, again, I think Luka signs an extension this summer, but it's not necessarily going to secure his entire future, because teams are going to be circling the Lakers like vultures to see if there is any kind of crack in that foundation, because they are in such a precarious position with their assets. And who knows, they make the right moves and they'll be just fine.
Yeah.
But if they don't, they haven't given themselves any margin for error.
Yeah. Is it like, I feel like with the foreign guys, they're more likely to stay where they go and be more loyal. That's a legit thing.
Yep.
So like, I do wonder about that too. Like, if these teams maybe think about that, but I think if you're one of these other teams, you're not doing your due diligence if you're not preparing for the possibility of trying to get one of these guys. And so by that same coin, I can understand why this team is trying to do the same thing a couple of years from now, and maybe looking at some of these guys. But I wouldn't imagine that he leaves, but you still got to go out there and prove it. You've still got to go out there and put together stuff and make things happen if you're Rob. And one thing we know about Rob is he's really good at selling the vision, at least to, he tries to sell it to everybody, but at least to like guys on the team. And I have to wonder how much of that, like, Luka's like, okay, well, let's look at the track record. You've been selling this vision for 5 years.
We have 3 picks again. We could really do this time. We might really do something with him.
Yeah. He didn't do a damn thing with him until you get Luka, which, okay. Okay, but like, yeah,
I mean, it's not wrong that they will have more draft capital next summer to use.
Yeah.
But again, we've been there before and they didn't use it, so now they'd have to prove it. Let's get our assets back and sign Russell Westbrook. No one wants Russell Westbrook. Doesn't want that. The Lakers don't want that. Lakers fans don't want that. No one wants that.
Where is he going? Because he's another one of these guys.
Maybe Milwaukee, actually.
Yeah, we talked about that. Man, that's interesting. I think that makes some sense.
I actually, for all the grief we give Russ, I actually thought he did a pretty good job with Denver overall.
Oh yeah, I thought he should have stayed personally, but they got Brown to replace him, so there's that. And they're making a little bit of a gamble on hoping that Brown goes back to being Brown of a couple years ago. But I thought he was good there for sure.
Jay, salaries for drafted players on teams for 4+ years only count 85-90% of the cap of their draft long-term team. That's how you fix it. Oh, so in terms of teams giving up, having to part ways with players they drafted, make the players that you drafted not count, have the entirety of their salary count against the cap. I've seen that proposal. I've seen some people say they should count 0 against the cap. I've seen some people say only 50% or whatever percentage that would be. I think you would have to be very careful there, because what always happens when the NBA changes things is there are unintended consequences. For example, with this, we're seeing it right now. When the NBA created their collective bargaining agreement that we're operating under currently, was the intention that teams were going to have to buy out players on big contracts and eat dead money on their books? No, this is not what they intended to happen. This is an unintended consequence of some of the rules and restrictions that they made. So what would happen, the knee-jerk reaction to this would be, well, draft picks become that much more valuable now if suddenly the players that you draft don't count for as much of the cap. And we could argue over whether or not that should remain the case. If you once you trade the player, I would assume that protection should go away, or perhaps when the player's off of their rookie contract, that type of incentive goes away. I don't know whether that's something that would be another thing to figure out. But you would increase the value of draft picks, but I wonder what other unintended consequences come with that change, because there's a lot of thought that has to go into this, and there will always be things that, even when you really look at the situation and dig deep into it, there's always going to be little things that happen. For example, right, years ago, long time ago, when we had 7-year contracts in the NBA, and the owners said, "Oh God, we're getting these guys that they're year 3 of a 7-year contract, and they're terrible, and they're not worth their money, and we've got these terrible guys on long-term deals, and this sucks. We don't want this anymore. Let's make shorter-term contracts." Guess what happened? The player empowerment era. Is that what owners wanted? Players to suddenly start jumping teams like crazy? No. That was the unintended consequence of, we don't like paying these players on 7-year deals that aren't worth the money. So now we're going to make shorter term contracts to protect us from that. Players went, cool, guess what? Now I'm a free agent more often. Hey, guess what? Now I'm a free agent at the same time as my buddies over there. Why don't we all go play together somewhere? The player empowerment era got kicked off by that. That was not the goal, though, of that change to the CBA. So we always see unintended consequences when we make changes to it. And that's something we have to keep in mind whenever we're proposing something, drastic or dramatic like that.
Yep, I agree.
Let's go here. Let's go way back. Boston trade Paul KG for Nets picks, and wasn't that Jason Terry was in there too? Turned into Tatum and Brown, and the Lakers let Powell and Dwight walk for nothing. Well, Dwight is part of the reason why I've been saying, if Luka doesn't sign the extension this summer, you have to immediately put him on the trade block, because you can't. We've lived that. You can't allow a player of that caliber to leave. It's too damaging. You can't allow a player of that caliber to walk away for nothing. Doesn't mean you have to trade him, but you have to seriously consider the possibility if he doesn't sign that extension. But that's part of it. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to see players just die on the vine in terms of their value. You want to be able to move them along and get value for them in order to maintain those kind of assets. And I think they've done, and not every team does this, because obviously free agents leave, and that's what happens. And every team loses players at some point. But in general, I think they've done a poor job rolling over assets and not allowing them to just expire. And unfortunately, that's part of what has put them in the situation they're in. Why have the Suns not said anything about signing Nigel Hayes-Davis? I don't know specifically. My guess would be because they haven't done it yet. Perhaps they usually, once a contract is officially signed, that's when teams will do it. Maybe they were waiting for the Beal situation to settle, and then they will take care of that. But typically, once a contract is signed, teams will, via Twitter usually, put out something official about it. So my assumption is it would be because it has not actually been signed as of this point.
I haven't even seen anything much about him at all.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of signings, there was one that was announced while we were on. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I didn't. What signing?
It was just the Bucks retaining one of their players.
Do you know who it was?
Hold on, let me go get it. I've been like super in the weeds in this chat.
Okay.
Kris Livingston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it a minimum, I'm assuming?
Yep. 1 year, 2.3.
Okay. Cool. I mean, I think the Bucks have had obviously it could go very, very wrong for them, but they've had a pretty good offseason.
Yep.
When we look at what the Bucks have done, the players that they've been able to add, given the restrictions they've been under. I think John Horst said today that he feels like they've done everything they could possibly do. I mean, who would have thought the Bucks would get Miles Turner?
That was so crazy. They pulled that out of nowhere.
That was
like if anybody knew he was on the market, they would have probably tried to move heaven and earth to get him.
And for people that are pining for what the Bucks have and saying like, oh, if the Bucks can make moves, why can't we make moves? Remember, there is a world where this goes very wrong.
There is.
Oh, they also they pick up Cole Anthony.
Yes. I was going to actually segue that, and we had a super or something about that, asking about his thoughts on Cole. We didn't actually cover that one.
That was probably when I was in Vegas for Summer League. I think that's a good addition for them too. They needed another guard. That makes sense. They kept some of their guys, kept Torian Prince, kept Gary Trent, Kevin Porter Jr. sticks around. Like if they were in the West, I would be less optimistic. But in the East, you look at this team and go, okay, why not? Why not? They could make a run. They could. I would put the Cavs ahead of them pretty comfortably, but they could be a team to make a run. They're in the mix.
Yeah. If you get maybe I don't want to say improved, but like maybe with a higher usage, higher role out of Turner, you can get more production out of him. Maybe he turns closer to a 20-point per game guy. Kuzma has a bounce back year, and Giannis continues to be Giannis. I mean, I could see them being really good, especially in the East. And I think they're going to be a really tough out in a 7-game series, and I wouldn't often want to bet against Giannis. So that's where I think this team could be really good.
You tend to just, in general, playing against Giannis is not a good idea.
Like I wouldn't want to bet against him. But the guy he's like a 30, 12, and 7 guy. Like I'm not, man. Like he's crazy. So you know what the crazy thing about Giannis is that he is like the only guy that's been able to play that way for that long without having to adapt his game or anything like that. He's 31 now.
He'll slow down at some point, but it's not
he
yet,
will,
man.
But like his size, athleticism, the speed he plays with, like he's still going to be a freight train and be able to get where he wants to go, even at 35, right? Like he's still going to at least give you 25 points, I think.
Unreal. Yeah, especially I think as he gets older, that jumper will get better because he's going to take more of them.
I mean, I would have thought so by now, but
no, I mean, like as he gets once he really doesn't have, then he's going to shoot so many. He's just naturally going to have to get better. Otherwise,
he's going to be like LeBron, basically. You know, a couple years ago, LeBron was putting up like 8 or 9 per game.
Yep. Alex said Cole Anthony bought out. Why wouldn't the Grizz try and trade him? They did. They just didn't find the right trade for him, and so they ultimately decided buying him out was better than taking back. So maybe a salary or a player that they didn't want. They decided that they were better off just buying him out, which I'm a little surprised because I do like Cole Anthony as a player. But they wound up just going the buyout path. That doesn't mean they didn't try to trade him or see what was out there, but the right opportunity just wasn't there with him. Let's go. Oh, here's the super chat. Thoughts on Anthony signing with Milwaukee once bought out? I liked the signing for them. I thought that was another good move. I do question defensively the Bucks. Miles Turner obviously can help you with rim protection. Giannis is incredible defensively. After that, I think that's where they have some struggles. But certainly this is a team that'll be able to score the ball.
Oh yeah, they're going to play up and down too. I may have bigger questions about the coaching than I do about the actual team. So
the danger of getting into a 3-1 series lead if Doc Rivers is your coach. If we can all agree that the team is in a tight spot because the assets have been managed poorly, why are we allowing the person that managed those assets to continue to make moves? Why was he promoted? Man.
He got promoted in the shadow. If you go back to it a couple years ago, he got promoted in the middle of the night. I don't know if it really was, but when nobody was paying attention to it, they silently extended him on that contract and all that stuff whenever they fired Vogel. Remember that?
It wasn't even that they did it quietly or anything.
They didn't announce
it. They said nothing about it because they knew how awful it would look.
Crazy.
That they were firing Frank Vogel for the season that he had when he was stuck with a team. He's a defense first coach that was given a team that had no defense. And so Frank Vogel died for the sins of the front office, and Rob Pelinka got a promotion off of it, or an extension off of it. Now, why is he continuing to move forward like that? Well, he's also made the big swings of, with the exception of the Westbrook trade, have been good, like the Anthony Davis trade, the Luka trade. He's made some good moves too. But in general, I've been a bit underwhelmed, and I've talked a lot about that. But why is he continue to stay on? I think because there's trust there from Jeannie Buss. Will that continue with Mark Walter? We'll see. I have my doubts.
I think the Jeannie Buss piece is the most important thing because she seems too nice. She seems like she doesn't like to tell people to kick rocks.
Dude, she fired her own brother.
That's true. But maybe because she had no choice but to do that at that point.
Well, I think she was so worried that
They were
Jim and
running it into
Mitch
the
at the
ground.
time were going to go make a crazy, terrible win now trade to try to save their own jobs, that she got rid of them in order to stop that from happening.
Yeah. But she's let him and the Ramby and all that stuff be in power for too long. What
They
did
were in
even
Vegas, by the way. The Ramby were there. They
what
were
the hell is
hanging
their
out.
official title, by the way? Advisors?
I don't know. Grand Czar of team friendship. I don't know.
Yeah, friends.
You know what's funny though is talking to like Quincy Oliveri specifically. He talked about how often Kurt Rambis was in the gym with him and like giving him pointers and like legitimately helping him with stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of funny. Like we've got this perception that they are what's wrong with the Lakers when nobody really knows exactly how everything operates. You know what I mean?
No. There were some nuggets of reports about them like pushing for certain guys to get minutes and things like that over the years, but we don't know the exact details.
Right. We don't know who has what power or how everything works in the inside circle there. But maybe that's part of the problem too, is that there is like this inner, so it's always like people that are already connected to the team in some way, people you've already known, and are you bringing in enough outside? Anyway, that's a whole other conversation for Lakers Nation that we can get to.
Yeah. Well, so on the Beal thing,
back to Bradley Beal. This finally happened. I don't think this is the end of moves. I think we're going to see more moves happening around the NBA. I think we're going to see the guard market now open up. I think this is a big get for the Clippers. I think this has been a great summer for them. It's a no-brainer for the Clippers. If Beal says 2 years, $11 million, you say yes. Here's the contract. Sign right here. It is an easy win for them. I love them. Their addition of John Collins as well. I thought that was a great move, particularly now with the Beal signing. For the Suns, I'll reserve judgment until we see what they do with the flexibility, very expensive flexibility that they've now bought. But let's see what they do with that flexibility there for the Phoenix side.
Yep, I agree with you. I wanted to end on this last comment I've seen in there a few times from Alex. How do teams pilfer from summer league teams like Swider and Bays going somewhere else since the Lakers probably won't move with them?
I mean, they're free agents technically. Like we've seen guys even move mid summer league. We've seen guys leave one summer league team and go join another. So unless those guys sign like Exhibit 10 deals or something, even an Exhibit 10 deal, if they got a full deal, they would be able to go. So unless they sign a contract with that club, any other team can come in and swoop them. That's why summer league players are not necessarily trying to make their specific team. They're trying to make a team, unless we're talking about a guy that's already on a rookie contract, already on an NBA contract, whatever. Everybody else is trying to make a team. It might not even be an NBA team. They might be trying to get the attention of a team overseas somewhere, but they are trying to get the attention of somebody. That's what players in summer league are going for, not necessarily to make the team on the club that they're with right now in that summer.
Well then.
Yeah.
Chris Paul next.
We'll see what happens.
Melton next.
Yeah, DeAnthony Melton. The Warriors got to figure out the Kuminga situation, but that's a story for another day. Everybody, if you haven't done so yet, we should have mentioned a few times during the show, make sure you hit the subscribe button to the Basketball Bulletin. We've been covering everything all summer. We will continue to do so. We're so thrilled with the growth that we've seen here on the channel, with how many people have been coming in, how many compliments I got while out in Vegas at Summer League about the channel, and how many people were talking about it. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. So truly appreciate all of you. Again, find the Basketball Bulletin on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Again, we're going over all the news and rumors around the NBA, have some new stuff coming as well. So please make sure you do hit that button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and thank you, everybody, for joining today. Till next time, see ya, and stay safe.